Greetings, I'm Professor Hobo, and welcome to another HOBOTECH News. You got it, product review. Pecron's an up-and-coming brand that offers some of the biggest bang-for-the-buck products in the portable power station market. They already have a pretty impressive lineup of power stations in the 50 to 60 cent per watt-hour range, and the one thing they were missing was a lithium iron phosphate offering. Well, now they have one on the market, and it's called the E2000LFP. It's one of the very few LFP power stations available in the still portable 2 kilowatt range that offers modular add-on batteries that you can plug right into the side to boost the total power up to 8 kilowatts. That's a lot of juice, but is it any good? Let's find out. Inside the Pecron is a 1920 watt-hour lithium iron phosphate battery rated at 3,500 cycles to 80%, or 10 years of daily use. As for size and weight, I'll go ahead and put that down here at the bottom of the screen. As for the design, the case is made of a pretty thick fire-resistant ABS plastic, and it does have a pair of rubberized heavy-duty grab handles built into the sides, and it also has some robust bumpers on all 8 corners to prevent some damage. It also offers a smart LCD display that shows charge and discharge time, net input-output watts, battery percentage with icon, voltage and power factor, as well as temperature and overload alarms. As for the inverter inside, it is a 2,000 watt pure sine with a 4,000 watt surge with 6, count 'em, 20 amp outlets. As for ways to charge, there are the typical 3. From typical AC grid power with a single charger takes about 4 hours, or with 2 of those chargers, you can cut that in half to about 2 hours. Now as for solar, it actually sports 3 MPPT controllers consisting of a pair of 600 watt that works between 32 and 95 volts for a total of 1200 watts, and a single 100 watt controller that works from 12 to 18 volts. Now Pecron does include a pair of MC4 to aviation cable adapters, which works with these 2 main MPPT controllers. To use the 3rd controller with solar, you do need to get a separate adapter. Now all 3 can be used simultaneously to charge from 0 to full in under 2 hours. And of course it also charges with 12 volts from a vehicle or a battery, and that will pretty much take forever. However, it is an option. Now as for 12 volt output types, the Pecron does offer a single 10 amp cigarette lighter socket and a pair of 5521 barrel plug outputs, each rated at 5 amps. Now as for USB outputs, it has 6 total: a single 100 watt power delivery port, a single 18 watt power delivery port, a single 18 watt USB-A quick charge port, and then 3 standard USB ports, good for charging up your dinosaurs. As for wireless charging, it does boast a single 15 watt wireless charging pad up top. Last but not least, the final trick that this pony offers is expandability up to 8 kilowatt hours through this external battery port. These external batteries are also lithium iron phosphate and 3,072 watt hours each. You can add up to 2 of these batteries total, and each battery features up to 400 watt MPPT solar charging, 100 watt 12 volt input, USB outputs, a cigarette lighter output, and a 30 amp XT60 output. So that's quite a lot of inputs and outputs just on their external battery. Now unfortunately that battery was not ready in time for this video, so they didn't send me one to test, so I can't actually show it off or even test it in this video. However, it literally just went on pre-order for under 50 cents per watt hour. I'll add a link below in the description if you're interested in checking them out. As for the warranty, Pecron offers a standard 1-year warranty, but you can double that to 2 years just by registering your product on their website. And of course we whipped out our Pecrons in the secret laboratory where we performed all kinds of crazy experiments on it, including, yes, of course, let's all do it together now, a double-fisted bang, bang battery capacity test. As for the results of the DC battery capacity test, it scored a fantastic 1,699 out of 1,920 watt hours for a very impressive 88%. As for the results of the AC battery capacity test, it scored an even better 1,780 out of 1,920 watt hours for a stellar 93%. These are some fantastic above average numbers from a budget brand, and that makes the last several Sogens that I've reviewed look pretty sad in comparison. Good job, Pecron, for owning the competition. Pure sine wave check under load. We have the Pecron running at a 1,000 watt load. Here's what the sine wave looks like. 111 volts, 60 hertz, pure sine wave. Inverter capacity test. This is where we determine how much power can we pull out of the 2,000 watt pure sine inverter on the Pecron. And that means only one thing. Dun, dun, dun! The solar degenerator. Okay, we're watching the number right here. I'm leaving the sine wave down here so you can check that out at the same time to see what happens as we push it to its limit. Well, that didn't take long at all. I barely hit 2,000 watts and it shut down. Let's try that again. Okay, we're at 1,800, 1,900, 2,000. Right at 2,000, it shuts down. So it looks like there is no overhead with this model. This next test is the 5-minute sustained cooling, or the heat soak test, where I will run it for 5 full minutes at its 2,000 watt load to see if it does anything crazy. Does it go skydiving, jumping off of bridges? Does it start smoking, drinking, smelling funny? Does it do anything out of the ordinary that it shouldn't do? So let's find out. Okay, this is about as close as I can get to 2,000 watts without tripping the overload. Let's go ahead and start and come back in 5 minutes and see what happens. Okay, here we are coming up on 5 minutes. No problems whatsoever, no funny smells, no overheating. The fans are running pretty loud, so let's go ahead and do a measurement. Here we are about a meter away. Let's see what the decibel level is. So right around 59, 60 decibels. Now that is on the louder side, but this is at max inverter. I notice it's much quieter when you're not running the 2,000 watt load. And here's just to give you an idea what the fans sound like. Max charge rate test. This is to determine how fast can we charge this via AC, DC, solar, car, through an external battery. So just be aware, if you're getting one of these Pecron LFPs, it does come with a giant metal brick with a loud fan in it that's only good for charging at 550 watts. So not very impressive, but this has 2 inputs on it. So you can plug 2 chargers in at the same time. Let's go ahead and try that. Now for the second charger, we're gonna go ahead and use my variable voltage one here. Pecron does include 2 MC4 to their aviation connector, which is a proprietary connector for Pecron. But this will allow us to connect solar panels, or in this case, fake solar, into the second input, just to see how fast can we actually charge this thing from the wall. Okay, so the Pecron can actually take up to 95 volts on each input, which is pretty nice. It gives you a lot of flexibility as to what kind of solar panels you want to use to charge this thing. So it quickly pulls 12 amps at 50 volts. And that means we're charging at 1,115 watts, so we can charge this thing completely from dead to full in under 2 hours. So that's pretty impressive. And let's see if we can get this to go any faster. Here we are at the 95 volt maximum. It's now only pulling 6.5 amps for the same 1,120 watts. So why is that? According to the book, each input can do 600 watts. So we're pretty close to the limit here. What we're doing is we're hitting the cap on the one input. So we're only getting 600 watts on one side. Okay, there's one important thing you need to know about these 2 inputs, and that while they support up to 95 volts, the minimum voltage is, it says 32 in the book, but it looks like 30 is the actual. And watch what happens if I reduce the voltage even by 1 volt. It drops to nothing. So it seems like 30 is the minimum, and it'll take 8 amps, and at the 32 volt recommended minimum, it doesn't seem like it makes much of a difference. It's still 8 amps, 250. So be aware, you cannot run a single solar panel on each one of these unless it's a high voltage solar panel, meaning it has to be something that is going to output more than 32 volts. And that's typically 2 panels in series. So it looks like, unfortunately, the way the Pecron is designed, you need to either charge it with 1 large residential panel, which are 24 volt panels that produce about 48 volts or so, or a pair of 12 volt panels, which combined is going to be in the upper 40 voltage range. So you have to put those panels in series on each input. So if you want to use both inputs and run solar on both inputs, you need a minimum of 4 12-volt panels or 2 24-volt panels. So just be aware of that minimum requirement. Most of the time nowadays, these generators don't have a minimum voltage like that, but this one does. Now, there is another DC input on this. This is basically for charging from 12 or 24 volts. You could technically put a solar panel into this, but they don't give you an adapter for that. They give you the cigarette lighter adapter for the 12-volt port, which will let you charge from a car, but they don't give you a way to put a solar panel in it. Now, of course, you can buy an adapter to do that. I'm pretty sure I got one on hobotech.tv/Amazon under cable adapters, which will allow you to put a solar panel into that port. In that case, you should be able to run one solar panel. So what does this mean for simultaneous charging with the Pecron? Well, it does simultaneous charge from 2 different sources, but none of these are AC sources. It's basically 2 DC sources. So technically it's simultaneous charging, but it's not simultaneous charging from 2 different sources such as AC and DC or DC and USB, because this has no way to charge it through USB. The only way you can charge this thing is with these 3 ports. You got a DC input, which is a 5525, and then you have a pair of these aviation ports. Okay, so what about simultaneous charging from the 5521 port and the aviation plugs? I have a brand I'm not going to mention solar generator up here with the 12-volt out, which is 13.6 volts. We're going to go ahead and plug it into the Pecron. It's currently charging at 550. It immediately starts going up. Looks like we might hit 600 watts. See, at 13.6 volts, this is only providing about 50 watts of charging. So apparently you need a little bit higher voltage than 13.6 to really peg this out at its 8 amp input. So does the Pecron offer a UPS or pass-through charging? Well, this does not have an uninterruptible power supply built in. This does charge with a charging brick, not plugged directly into the wall. It converts the AC to DC, then charges this with DC. So there's absolutely no UPS feature on this. This does support full pass-through charging, meaning that while you are charging it with the brick or with solar or whatever else, you do have AC output, DC output, and it does include USB. So AC, DC, and USB all work while you're charging the Pecron. All right, what about USB charging? This thing offers a 100 watt USB power delivery output, an 18 watt USB power delivery output. So with the Pecron and a 5 amp cable hooked up to the 100 watt power delivery, I do have a power bin up here charging, which can take 100 watts, which is 20 volts at 5 amps. Let's see what happens. Well, it looks like it stops at 60 watts for some reason. Let's try my other power band, which isn't as charged as much. All right, this is very interesting. I'm only able to pull 62 watts from the USB 100 watt power delivery port. I do not know why that is. All right, 64 watts is all I can pull. This power band is discharged to 63%. It should be taking 100 watts all day long. Let's try switching the cable just to make sure. I have another cable, which is also, it says right there, it's gold plated. It says 5 amps. That means 100 watts. I'm plugging it into the 100 watt power delivery, plugging it into the power bin. Are we going to see any more than 64, 62 watts? We're only getting 64 watts out of the 100 watt power delivery port. That is not acceptable. That means that this port is a 60 watt port, not a 100 watt port. Let's try plugging it into the 18 watt. This should still take 18 watts. It's basically 12 volts at, oh, there we go. Easily, actually, we're pumping 25 watts out of the 18 watt port. So that's good. That's at least good news. But the 100 watt power delivery is not power delivering like it should. Let's try it one last time. And again, I'll show you. This is 63%, 64% charged. It should be taking 100 watts. Easily. So that is unfortunate. The Pecron does not actually have a 100 watt power delivery output. It has a 60 watt. They have it labeled as 100. So keep that in mind if you need a 100 watt power delivery. Now you're only gonna need a 100 watt power delivery if you're running like a high-end MacBook or something like that that requires 100 watts. 60 watts is still gonna be good for lower-end laptops and other accessories. So this might not be a big deal for you. Okay, what about the 12 volt output? Is it regulated? Yes, it is at 13.5 volts. Now, will the 10 amp output actually output 10 amps? Let's see. So there it is, pulling about 9.5 amps. It is still doing over 11 volts, which is good enough for most compressor refrigerators. Now the Pecron does offer a wireless charging pad on the top. Let's see if it even works. Now my phone doesn't have wireless charging built in, but I do have one of these pads. Let's put it on top. If we hear a sound, we know it's wirelessly charging. So there you have it. The wireless charging does in fact work. It's charging my phone at a whopping 5 watts. Musician's favorite, amp interference test. This is where we determine, is the Pecron good enough to run a power amp or ham radio or a PA system or something like that. So all I have to do is turn the inverter on, and I have the amp plugged in. All the knobs are cranked up, nothing's plugged in. We'll see if the inverter makes noise. Place your bets. 3, 2, 1. And surprise, 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 the Pecron is actually very clean. So if you're looking for something affordable in a 2 kilowatt size that's good enough to run a power amp, ham radio, PA system, you want to rock out in your band, this might be an option for you. So what do I think about the Pecron? Well, first, let's start with a few things that I think are just a little bit lame. One of them being the use of the large, bulky external charging bricks that went out of style quite a long time ago. Now, for a product of this caliber, that's kind of lame. I understand it's a big cost-cutting move, but with the price of inverter chargers coming way down, it's almost inexcusable. Now, if you don't recharge this thing often with AC power, or you do so in a fixed location where these big heavy bricks won't make any difference, then it's not really a big deal. However, the use of these big charging bricks also means that offering a UPS feature inside of this, or uninterruptible power supply, is physically impossible since there's no internal charger. So basically, Pecron is handicapping their products to not have a UPS feature. We're gonna have to hope that in the future, they get rid of the big chargers, put an inverter charger built in, and add UPS, and then it'd be on the same level as the big three. Second, this new E2000LFP is literally just a rehash of their older existing E2000, which uses a short cycle NMC battery. And all they did was take the exact same product, throw a lithium iron phosphate battery in it, and do nothing else. Now, I went back to my original notes on the E3000 that I reviewed earlier this year, and believe it or not, that too only output 60 watts from the 100 watt power delivery port. So Pecron didn't even bother to fix the borked 100 watt power delivery on this brand new product. At the very least, they could have just simply relabeled this port 60 watts instead of telling everybody it's 100 and only outputting 60. Nope, didn't bother whatsoever. Pecron, that's lame. Now, on the outside, this is a very solid product with a really clean inverter, with some well-rounded USB outputs, triple MPPT controllers, a wide solar voltage range with a sizable 1200 watt input. It's also very quiet to charge and actually not that loud at maximum output. It rates well above average on usable battery capacity. Best of all, it's the cheapest per watt of any product I've ever tested that actually offers modular battery expansion. You usually don't find that feature cheap anywhere, but Pecron somehow pulled it off. So if you can overlook the few faults that the Pecron E2000LFP has, it's a pretty killer deal, especially if you don't really care or need fast AC charging or a UPS feature or an app or anything fancy like that. Product price. Now here's the best part. The retail price of the E2000LFP is currently $13.99. That in of itself is actually dirt cheap for a 2000 watt LFP generator. And that's at the time of this filming. But of course you, a viewer of HOBOTECH, is not gonna pay that. You get your own special discount code that drops that price from $13.99 to $13.29. That's only 69 cents per watt hour or 66 cents per watt, however you want to look at it. Now, for everything you're getting with this power station, including the battery expansion, that's dirt cheap. Now, what about the competition? We all know there are dozens, if not hundreds, of 2 kilowatt solar generators out there. Now, the FF Power that I just reviewed and the BLUETTI AC200P are both pretty solid competitors to this because they're both lithium iron phosphate. Now, some of you may say, what about the EcoFlow Delta Max? Well, it would be a competitor, but it's $500 more than this. So I don't really consider that competition. Now, neither the FF-Power nor the BLUETTI offer any kind of real battery expansion abilities. And when I say that, I mean there are no bi-directional options. Now, virtually any solar generator out there with a 12-volt input can charge from an external battery, but none of those can actually send power back into the battery or recharge it. Pecron's external batteries not only can charge the E2000LFP, but can also be recharged from the main unit or independently with their own built-in solar controller, and that power goes both directions. So you can literally plug a solar panel into the external battery and charge this main unit. That's a pretty rare feature. That allows you a lot of flexibility if you have this and two external batteries to add additional solar, charge from multiple methods. You can actually run off of one battery while the other battery is charging outside with solar, then swap them as needed. That ability really opens up a lot of options. If you think about it, that's pretty sweet at this price point. In fact, I think it makes them the cheapest mid-size SoGen on the market with this ability, and with the cheapest per watt hour expansion batteries. Remember, those expansion batteries are only 50 cents a watt hour. Now you might be saying, okay, this is still too expensive, but let me give you an idea of just how cheap the Pecron is compared to the competition. So if you bought that EcoFlow Delta Max and its two add-on batteries for only 6 kilowatt hours of total power, it costs you around 4,200 bucks. That's 70 cents per watt hour. If you get the Pecron and max it out with its two external batteries for 8 kilowatt hours of total power, it would cost you around 4,300 bucks, or pretty much the same price. But that, when you work out to how much extra power you're getting for the money, is a measly 53 cents per watt hour. Basically, by getting the Pecron, you get 2,000 watt hours of extra power for free. So who's this product aimed at? Now, 2 kilowatt power stations are basically the bread and butter of the SoGen market, because they're still small and light enough to tote on a weekend camping trip, but also power enough to run virtually any 120 appliance that you could possibly need. You can run blenders, coffee makers, hair dryers, toasters, hot plates, instant pots, fans, air fryers, you name it. You can even use these to run small window air conditioners, small electric heaters, as well as a residential refrigerator for almost a full day when the power goes out. That makes something this size with this amount of power very versatile. Okay, so what about solar? Pecron, of course, offers their own solar panels, but they're prohibitively expensive for a discount brand. You can literally use any solar panels you like, and options are somewhat vast because of the wide range of voltage the Pecron can take. Now, if you buy what's called an MC4 to 5525 barrel plug adapter, available on hobotech.tv/Amazon, you can actually plug a single 100 to 120 watt solar panel into this 100 watt input and trickle charge it over a number of days. However, if you want to charge this thing in a single solar day, you're going to need a minimum of 360 watts of solar, and that could be a pair of 100 watt to 200 watt panels in series. Now, I'd recommend a pair of BOUGERV 180 to 200 watt panels, and of course I got discounts for those on my website. But if you're really serious about maxing this thing out, you can get 4 of the RENOGY 320 watt residential panels, run 2 of those in series on each of the 2 MPPT controllers for 1,280 watts of total charging power. Since the Pecron maxes out at 600 watts on each MPPT controller for a total 1,200 watts, that's just about as perfect as it's going to get. You're not going to go over voltage, and you're going to be right in the sweet spot to charge this thing at its maximum rate. Now, I like those RENOGY 320 watt panels so much. I have 8 of them, and I'm putting some on my RV, and the rest are going on the roof of the lab to power this whole building by solar. If you're interested in these panels, I will have a link in the description of this video. If you're interested in the Pecron, the link and discount code are going to be in the description of this video below. I'm also going to put a link right here at the bottom of the screen, along with a QR code that you can scan on a mobile device. They'll take you on over to the Pecron site, where you can check out the E2000LFP. Thanks for watching. If you learned something today, don't forget to give me that thumbs up below. And if you're not a subscriber already, you know what to do. That's it for now. Until next time.
Odin commands you to like and subscribe, and clean my litter box.
If your search for a Sultan is a pain in the neck, go to YouTube and watch HOBOTECH, cause he's a testing this and he's a probing that. He's even been probing Odin's cat. If you want to get all the Sultan back, go to HOBOTECH. Yeah!
RV Golf Guy. Vaughn Rupp, Brian Luters, John Jason Soroka, Dr. Steve Eisenberg.